Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Matrix Revolutions. So, I think a lot of people might actually hate this film, and some people might actually love this film. It's kind of this back and forth battle of how people really feel maybe mixed about this movie. Maybe they're just like, man, they should have stopped after Matrix. There's a lot of people that have that feeling of they only wanted the Matrix and that was good enough for them. Any of the Superman-esque like sequels that came after this is like, why did they even go further on? And a lot of people might feel about that about the brand new film that is to come out fairly recently called Resurrections. Some people might have said, yeah, they should have stopped at 3. Um, or some people might be in the minority and they might love the new film. There's some parts of me that says for Resurrections, I can like parts of it, but not the movie as a whole. So I have like kind of mixed feelings about it. I don't want to 100% hate it because I feel like with time, maybe I can grow to like that film. And so I don't want to be too harsh on that film, even though really it's too much of a fan service, fanboy like film, which really I could not tolerate. Where in this movie, like, I like the fact that we don't have this being like a goodbye kind of film. Like, we're kind of hugging everybody and everyone's saying goodbye. Like, it doesn't feel like we're having that kind of like Star Wars Episode 6 kind of thing where we're having the kind of celebration in the camp and Luke is kind of looking at all the shadows of previous other Jedis and sometimes it's old Anakin, sometimes it's young Anakin because freaking editing of that. I think that's my huge hesitation about ever wanting to watch a Star Wars film, especially the 4, 5, and 6 ones, because they changed it so much. Like, it almost feels at some point that it's a brand new film because they keep adding garbage into it. And I would love to see like the original run of that film without all that goofy extra adding scenes garbage to try to make it look like a new film. And you would think that every single time that they would add something in there, like somebody would be consistently keep getting like freaking like some cash from that, some sweet cheddar from because they're probably just going to continue to just keep changing it and modify it. They might as well just freaking remake the films at this point for how much that they're changing and adding from the original. Even though a lot of people love Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, like it's going to get to the point where they're just going to want to just we're going to remake these films because we just want to make money. Like, and people love them so much. So you're going to, like, basically ruin the only Star Wars films that people absolutely love? You're going to ruin those? You might as well then have to retcon and change the 6, 7, and 8 ones because they're tied technically into the... So you're going to have to change a lot of stuff. But anyways, let's go out of our way. So the grading system of this movie, I would say that this is a great film. I like it. I enjoy it. I really can have fun while watching this movie. Of course, we get a very interesting action scene between both Smith and Neo. Luckily, I've seen Reloaded recently because I don't think that I'd be able to review this film if I was to have seen Reloaded recently, because there's a lot of Reloaded stuff that's tied into this film. So I feel a little bit more confident in spewing all this out because I feel that I'm still kind of quasi-familiar with stuff from the other film. And so when I have to go into this, I feel that at some point I can kind of still rattle this stuff off with certain characters and whatever. But yeah, so I like this film. And let me know in the comments below how you feel about it, or how you still feel about Resurrections. Maybe you're just like, yeah, I wish this would be the last film. Or maybe some people hate every movie. I don't know. Maybe they don't even like. What if there's a person out there that actually doesn't like The Matrix? What if they like none of the movies and they're just coming on here saying, I hate all these films. Why are they everywhere? Why is the internet covering all of these? Mah. You know what? If you hate all these films, because I've seen these kinds of people that go on and like, I hate this movie, and I'm like, why? And they don't have an answer. They're just like, I don't like this film. I don't like any of them. Um, but hey, it's okay because at the end of the day, I'm gonna go out of my way to talk about this whole entire film, and without a doubt, try and cover all of this stuff and just kind of go into the movie and replay it in my mind and just have the fun of it. To just like have a feeling that this is just it was a good movie. I liked it, like, and so positive. Weirdly enough, because I wasn't thinking I was going to like this for some odd reason, and the weird thing of it is, I still for some reason I don't remember how I've known about this movie. It's kind of weird because I remember certain parts of this movie, but I don't remember actually ever seeing this film. So I'm like, how did I ever see this movie without actually seeing it? Like, was there a trailer that showed me everything? What, like, what, how is it that I haven't seen this by now? And I don't remember ever going into a video or something. Like, I don't know how it is. Maybe it's just this weird brain power of something where all of a sudden, like, I've seen a movie without actually seeing it. I don't know. Because I've never seen. I don't think I've like. I don't think I've seen this whole movie. I could probably say that, but because all that I knew or all that I remember possibly about this movie when it came out is the girl that ended up playing the Oracle in this film had to play Oracle because the girl who was originally Oracle had died. Like, that's all that I know. So they had to kind of write it into the movie for Oracle having to change who she is because the original person who played Oracle had passed away. So I'm like, oh, that's sad. Like, that's the only thing I remember about when this movie came out. And so, with that said, I think it's about that time to go into spoilers. So I think it's that double five time territory. I think it's about that time. Normally, when I get into these big, massive films, like something just clenches inside of me, where I'm just like, we'll see how this all goes, and hopefully it doesn't derail at some point, because I'm waiting for one of these movies to just like pooh my brain from all of this thought process and thinking of this film. So let's go out of our way to say that it is, yet again, spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. So, in the very beginning of this film, we, of course, are to no longer to be concluded or to be continued from that garbage from Reloaded. Now we are going and finishing up that cliffhanger of garbage. That when I remember watching Reloaded, I'm like, to be continued? Are you kidding me? Like, that's what kind of ticked me off about this film, where I was like, I don't know if I really want to watch this film, because that ending, like, you, like, telling me that there's going to be another movie coming, whatever, like, come on, you think you're better than me? Like, that I could just wait and completely forget that this movie is going to be out and watch it years later and somehow enjoy it, weirdly? You did your job, Warner Brothers. You did your job. Anyways, so the beginning of this movie is to showcase that Bane and Neo are still in this thing called a coma. We have the medic of this Hammer ship, because when I go on and I try to figure and see if this person has an actual name, nothing could be found from my end. I couldn't seem to quickly see this. So Trinity is going on and talking to this medic, and so the medic is saying that Neo's kind of brain pattern seems to be very weird. It seems like for him that he is still somehow like his brain is weirdly connected to the Matrix, even though he's not actually hooked in, or as they say in this movie, jacked in. They're jackhammering him in. Whatever. It's jack. That sounds so weird. So I guess they had to come up with a technical term for it. They couldn't have just said they're connected from Iron Man 3. Anyways, so but when they go and they kind of scope out Bane's noggin, they go on and they say like there's also something like weird about his brain, and so we end up having Roland telling the medic that hey, when this guy like wakes up, we want to know like information from him and like get it by any means possible because this guy is going and like self-inflicting wounds upon himself, and so we need to figure out like what is wrong with this guy. So we and I'm hoping that I'm kind of like I feel like I'm like what big massive thing am I not going into? So Neo, of course, is to be at this subway station where I'm not going to go out of my way to come up with exact names for film locations and where all of this stuff was filmed. Go into any other review or reviewer and like find that like microscopic minute detail. I'm not going to have that kind of detail in this kind of film. Wonder Woman, yeah, that's easy, but this one there is too much really to go on and not have to go through every scoop of little intertwining detail thing. So but we have, of course, Neo who wakes up at uh, this subway station, and so I remember reviewing Resurrection, and like I remember, of course, Sati, but like I couldn't figure out what that was connected to. There was something where I ended up saying that Neo, I think, was or the father and Sati or somebody was stuck on that train station or that subway station, but I couldn't exactly figure it out. And that's because I didn't remember this part all that well. So, Neo is to meet a little girl named Sati, and Sati is to then walk Neo over to a guy named Rama Kandra. And so we find out that Ramakandra is to have a wife and his daughter Sati, and Neo is to realize that these guys are programs. And so Rama is, of course, waiting for a subway to come for the guy named the Train Man to let him on this of course subway. And so now Neo is trying to figure out, I'm like, okay, well, who controls the Train Man? And we of course have Rama, who's to mention it's like, well, the Frenchman, and Neo's like, well, of course it is. And so Neo is to also like ask them, it's like, well, hey, like what kind of programs are you? Ramakandra, I think, is to be a guy who works at the power plant, and he ends up having his own kind of job of things. We have also his wife that kind of has some kind of thing going on with her, and it seems that she's kind of very like aggressive with her kind of questioning, much more so than Rama is, and so really, this is kind of very vague. There's a whole reason for that because there's a lot going on in this noggin here. So we of course have it where the Frenchman is to of course be Merovision, or Vision, Merovision, uh, of course from the other movie, where of course he is the guy who is to mention about causality and cause and effect, and we kind of have Merovision going on in this same kind of quoting, kind of ballparking like way in this movie, but it seems like he doesn't have this huge amount of dialogue in this movie. It just seems like he's here. And so, like, him and his weird named wife that is called, like, Persephone? Persephone? Good God, did I just pull that out of my just rumpus room, so to speak? Good God, yeah, that was, that was gold. So, we of course go on and we have, of course, this family with Ramachandra and Sita. Sita? Wow, that's gone now. Um, and so Sati, yeah, there we go. Uh, and so we have this family going onto this train, uh, this subway, and so Neo, of course, is going on, uh, trying to make it onto this train with them. But the train man is like, oh, like, so you're the one that they were trying to go and retrieve. And so now let's get to that. So we end up having, of course, Trinity and Morpheus going and finding, of course, the guy who is to be named the Sarath. So Trinity and Morpheus find Sarath, and Sarath ends up taking both of them to the Oracle. And so now, of course, they have to explain why the Oracle is to look different now than she was in previous movie. Well, the Oracle goes on and explains that because of her going on and like how they really explain it in this movie is because the Oracle had given Neo the information about the Keymaker. That is the reason why the Moravision Vigian went on to remake the Oracle the way he did, because she had taken the Keymaker away from him and killed him off, technically. Because like she was technically a part of that. The Oracle gave Neo that information for him to go on and take that Keymaster. So because the Oracle kind of overstepping and guiding Neo and helping Morpheus, the Matrix finally went after Oracle and changed her and remade her. So that's how they kind of answer that in this movie of why this actress is to be different here. Because eventually when they go in there, they're like, huh, who are you? And so they have to explain. So we end up having, of course, going on and having Morpheus and Trinity going and talking to the Oracle. And so we really have it where, like, when Morpheus is kind of asking the Oracle a question here, like, the Oracle is just kind of, like, pushing it back on Morpheus to just say, it's like, well, hey, the reason why I was always here was really for you to make up your own dang mind. And, like, me coming here is just to persuade you to, like, you coming here is for me to just persuade you to come up with your own answers. And I think that's who the Oracle is for just everybody. Or really, we just have a number of people that already know their answers, but are going to eventually realize why they already want to do these answers or know these answers. We even have Niobe that was to go on and speak to the Oracle before like her ship is to go down, called the Legos in this movie. Not Legos, like logos. Uh I said that wrong. So it's logos. Like when you like this thing. Like when you slap like a decal or something, it's a logo. So logos. So anyways, so already we're kind of barely in here and scratching the surface and so on and so forth. So we have the Oracle going on and talking to these people, and at some point we're gonna have Sati, the Oracle, and we're gonna have, of course, uh, Sarath wanting to go and run away from Smith, because eventually they're coming for them. Because of course Smith is wanting to go and control everybody and get his hands into everybody. And so eventually that'll end up even being the Oracle. So, like, wait a minute. So, like, Smith didn't go after the source, he didn't go after the architect. Why is that? Because then Smith would be way too powerful, and all of a sudden there'd be two different Smiths that had this uber power and couldn't go after and couldn't easily have Neo beat them. Anyways, so we now have to have, of course, the Oracle relaying to both Trinity and Morpheus where exactly Neo is, and that he's being kind of kept in this subway station by this train man, and the train man is being controlled by Meravision and Vigian? Meravision. And so I can't wait for that name is over. I can't wait for I never have to say that again. So so we have Sarath, we have Morpheus, we have Trinity going to the subway to find the train man, and so they're chasing after him. But what ends up happening is that the train man ends up getting away. Hence why we end up having the train man going and talking to Neo and saying, like, like, you were the one that they wanted. So Morpheus, Trinity, and Sarath give up on going and getting to the train man. So instead, they cut out the middleman and go right to the source, so to speak. They go to Merovingian and tell him to free Neo or else. Because they go into this club, which is to be called Club Hell, HEL, and so they end up having to go through this secret, or this elevator that is to force them to go into this coat room to relieve them of all their weapons, which they don't, of course, want to do because they want to fight their way out of here. And so when they go into this coat room, we have all of these characters that are flipping from like one part of the, like, they can kind of go from the ceiling and flip that way, and then they can go and flip again and be on the ground, and it's kind of this weird goofy thing going on here where we have these guys who are kind of flipping all around but eventually get killed, because what difference does this really make for them to do what they're doing here? It's just a cool thing for them to do at the end of this movie, or towards the end of this franchise, just be spending some money on some special effects for them to do some goofy and interesting camera angles and do some effects and whichever. So So yeah, so we go on, and plus they also wanted to do something that felt similar to the very first Matrix movie, where both Trinity and Neo are kind of hiding behind those walls and kind of shooting those guys, and then kind of hiding behind these walls and then shooting them, like kind of like the end battle sequence from the first movie. So after they go through this coat room, they eventually go on to find the right floor, which again, they meet with Merovigion and Persephone, which I can't believe I'm even saying that because like I mispronounced that I think the very first time, and I don't even think I'm still pronouncing it correctly. So we have all three of these guys who are kind of going on and kind of like holding their guns out to everybody. And it was kind of interesting because Sarath was mentioning how uh, this elevator has a had the coat check thing, because if the elevator realizes that someone has a gun inside of it, then that's when they are to go to this coat check room. And but then eventually they go into, of course, the club hell, and they go on to speak with Metavision. I keep saying it. So we go on and we have this guy, of course, with a long stretch of name, going on and almost kind of like having this kind of like cause and effect kind of speech of sorts, where he's going on in this whole thing. And so, but really, most of what he's wanting to cover is what had happened with the Oracle, so we can get a much more sense of what had happened to her through his perspective. And so we have this guy who's going on and mention, and this is the Merovingian, if you guys want to know. I'm trying to avoid it saying his name as much as possible. So he of course mentions, it's like, well, hey, like I will go on and give you Neo if you guys give me the eyes of the Oracle. Like I'll do that. I'll have you guys go and fetch that for me, because we have this guy who, of course, is to mention how like the Oracle had taken something away from him, so he thought this would be a way to get even with her. So Trinity is just tired of this, and so she goes and she puts a gun to this guy's head and saying, "Hey, how about this deal? You give us Neo and we let you live, or you don't give us Neo and we'll kill all of you right now and you'll kill us, but like at least you'll be dead." And that's kind of the offer Trinity has on the table. So the guy, of course, is to go and have a subway be coming for Neo, because Neo is going on and trying to figure out how to get out of this subway. He's running down this stretch of track, realizing that he's just going round and round in circles, kind of like the one thing in Thor Ragnarok where Thor is trying to get out of this one place that's kind of like uh, like prisoning these warriors, and he tries to like run around it, and we have kind of Korg who's like, "Oh hey, new Dave," and so but we have Thor who's kind of going around in circles. He's like, "Oh, I guess like there's no way out of here." So Neo is to realize that he's like thinking that he can possibly do some kind of uh, Neo thing to get out of here, like some Hadouken or whatever the heck that he does in Resurrections, maybe. Which I don't think he actually does in this film, unless I'm mistaken. But he does some like Hadouken, like weird, goofy thing in Resurrections, and I'm like, I guess they had to figure out something for him to do different from all the other things. So it's whatever. So we we also had the train man who was to smash Neo into this wall and he falls over. But now the train man is like, okay, like, come on down because Trinity is there, and so both Neo and Trinity are to hug and are to kiss, and like we basically have these guys go on and are to possibly get out of the Matrix, but Neo's like, but wait, like I want to see the Oracle before I leave, and they're like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, like I really have to ask her a plethora of questions, so I need her to like kind of figure some things out. Really, we just have Neo going to the Oracle, and really we again have the same kind of dialogue from the Reloaded movie here, where Neo is still saying that the Oracle is to, like, why is it that Neo didn't get all of the answers the very first time that she was talking to him? Why didn't the Oracle lay everything down and tell him everything that was going to happen through all of these movies? That eventually Scion was possibly going to fall. Tell him everything. And also, like, Neo is still kind of confused why he can be in the Matrix without him actually being jacked in, and so on and so. Like, Neo is wanting all of these billions of freaking answers. Like, he wants the ultimate answer. Like, from, like, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy wants to know what 42 means. What does it mean? What does it mean, Oracle? And so Oracle is like, well, hey, I told you only what you needed to know at that time. And so, like, so that very first Matrix movie, all that Neo needed to know at that point was that he was not the one. So Neo would just be like, well, F it, I am the one anyways. And so, like, that's all he needed to know in that very first film. In the second movie, all he needed to know was, hey, here's this this keymaker guy. And, like, so really for this, we really just, like, if the Oracle was to just spell out, like, all of this stuff for Neo, man, would his, like, brain just be overloaded with too much information, and he probably wouldn't have remembered all of that crap. So, like, it was good that the Oracle is to technically simplify everything for Neo and kind of telling him, like, all he really needed to know during one piece of time. Or otherwise, like, Neo would have just been like, God, my brain is full because I know, like, I know the whole story in Matrix Revolution because I read the script, but also the Oracle told me everything. So, but we also had the Oracle that is still pointing to the sign from the very first Matrix film called Know Oneself. And we also have the Oracle, like, still reminding Neo that she still loves candy from the Reloaded movie. And she also goes on and is to try and make cookies. And Sati is there just like, hey, Neo! And, like, Neo's like, hey! So, the Oracle is trying to say, it's like, man, I wish I could have, like, made cookies before you arrived here, but it was, like, far too late. So, Neo goes on and is, of course, to get unhooked. So, after that moment, we, of course, finally have the Oracle make all these cookies. And so now, we, of course, have Sarath go and take Sati and try to get her out of here. Because now the Oracle is to, of course, go on and be simulated into, of course, Agent Smith's world of things. And so now we'll have a Agent Smith that has the Oracle like power, and so supposedly this is to be way different than any other normal Smith here, to where it seems that this Smith will kind of have much more of Neo's power, where he can fly and do all these kinds of things, and it seems that he can do whatever he wants. That is to basically be as equal to Neo, because he is this superpowered Oracle Smith. Weirdly to say here, but it's true. So Smith is to make his way to both Sati and Sarath, and mention how kind of difficult it was for Smith to get to them, but eventually now we're here, and so they end up getting assimilated. And so Smith is going to Oracle, and she, of course, is sitting there. And Smith is a little confused because Sarath and Sati were going through this building trying to escape, trying to get into an elevator. The elevator didn't work. They try to go down these flight of stairs. All of a sudden, Smiths are making their way up the stairs. They go into this one room and just kind of lock the door, and eventually Smith makes his way into this door. So there was nowhere for them to run, and the Oracle is to realize the exact same thing. But also, the Oracle is to still make one last decision here, technically. So we have Smith, who goes on and takes this whole bowl of cookies, and he takes it and chucks it up against the wall. And he's like, you already knew I was going to make that decision. And so, you already knew the outcome of this. And so, you sitting here weirdly has a purpose. So what is that purpose? What is that reason for you sitting here? Because you had decided to sit here, and now I'm wanting to wonder why. Why are you doing this? Why are you sitting here? And so, but we always have it to where it always comes down to choice. It's because I chose to. So we have Smith, who's just simulate, just get rid of this girl. Ah! I hate her. It seems like she just kind of outwitted me, but I don't know why she's outwitting me. So we now, of course, have the Hammer going and finding the Legos, or the logos. They end up finding this ship, and they go on to find that Naomi and the rest of the people are still alive on this ship. And so all they need now is some kind of jump start for their ship to come back on. And so coincidentally, at the same miraculous time that Neo is to get unhooked, all of a sudden Bane is to wake back up. And so Bane is to be sitting at this table where, of course, people are asking him a number of questions about, hey, what happened to your ship? What had gone on? Why do you have, these cuts on your hand? It seems like they've been there for a while. Answers, buddy. Answers. So we, of course, have Bane Smith, because he's technically a Smith now. He's answering it in the way of which that only a Smith would answer it. Mr. Anderson. So he always has to talk just like this. He always has to talk just like this. Anyways, so Bane goes on, and his answer really is just like, well, I don't remember. And and he basically just plays it off like he weirdly has amnesia from his coma. And Roland isn't accepting that answer, so we have Roland talking to the medic. It's like, I don't care if you have to beat it out of him. Like, figure out a way for him to remember to give us the answers that we want. Freaking do whatever you have to do to get this guy to remember. So, we of course have the medic going and giving Bane the syringe. And so Bane is like, well, like, what is this syringe going to do? And she's like, well, it's going to help you try to remember things. And Bane is like, but what if I don't want to remember? What if I did hit the EMP and kill all those people? And what if I am a murderer? And so it seems like this medic is just like, man, I just want to, like, I'm thinking that this guy did this. So we have it where Bane now stabs this medic and kills her, and they end up finding her body much later, and they put of course, a little blanket over her, and like, oh my god, like I knew that this guy, like, there was something wrong about him, and I should have beat out all those answers out of him, but I didn't do anything because, like, they naturally assumed that this wasn't going to be some villainous guy. But man, were they wrong. So we also have the council of people all going on and talking to Locke, and they're kind of preparing now, because Hammer's ship is to kind of get intel that supposedly in 12 hours Zion is going to get attacked, and because they're kind of figuring it out, or I think it's either Locke is coming with this information, but I think it's kind of like a universal, like they're coming up with this information that it's going to be 12 hours before Zion gets attacked. So they're kind of preparing for this. They're gearing up for this, and so one of the councilmen, of course, is going on and asking. It's like, well, hey, like, where is the Nebuchadnezzar? And they're like, well, we haven't heard anything from this ship, and like, it's best that we just think that none of these ships are going to come back, and that we're on our own here. And so, like, yeah, that doesn't sound good. So we have, of course, Z. Z is going on and creating these shells for these rocket launchers. And so Kaz is to come in to talk to Z, and we end up finding out that Kaz actually was a wife of Dozer. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's the connection there, because I think in the other film, like, I didn't understand who this girl was, like, with. Like, I didn't understand, like, who was she, whatever. Because I didn't make that connection in the other movie. I didn't go out of my way to wiki this person or figure out who she was. I just decided, I'm like, well, that's Kaz. Yeah, she's walking away, because I didn't want to take that kind of time to know further on who that person was besides her name. So Z does not want to leave, and she just wants to create shells for these rocket launchers, because she thinks if she stays here, that Link will soon come back, and she wants to defend this place for Link to come back to it. And plus also she wants to go and make these shells so that way they can all survive, because somebody has to do it. It'll get to the point where we have kind of Locke mentioning that he wants every man, woman, and children, like, going and basically toting guns and, like, trying to make sure that they are to win this war and have every available person, even if we have a kid who says that he's 18, but really he's 16. And we, of course, have him just like going on and like lying about his age. And so we have Nifun, who is to say, like, hey, if you said 16, I'd believe you. And the guys and kid is just like, well, hey, like I just want to help out. And so Nifun is telling this kid, it's like, well, hey, like if you don't do your job properly, like me and the machines are gonna have something in common. Like we're gonna both want to kill you murderously, horrifically, so on and so forth. So, so yeah, so we have the guys having some plan of how they're going to get back to Zion. And so we, of course, have Roland who's coming up with this plan of having a two-ship job where the one ship is to kind of blow his EMP for the other ship to make their way into this place and kind of like sacrifice one ship to kind of save another kind of thing. And Niobe is just saying no. Like, if anything, like, Niobe can take this one ship through this support line, and eventually it's like 1,000 feet, but like they have to go all through these complicated like maneuvers. And Roland the whole time is like, man, this girl can drive. Like, man, I didn't even know my ship could even do that. Oh my god! Like, we just have Roland have so many reactions, and it's freaking priceless. Uh, but yeah, so we have Niobe who's like, well, I can take a ship and make it through that thing, but I'm not quite sure that another person could follow me with their ship because she's going to go through that with her ship Logos, and but the hammer is still there. So Neo goes on and is to ask to borrow a ship because he's going to go to Machine City to go and talk to the machines and figure out how to make a deal with them. And so we of course have Hammer telling Neo, it's like, well, that's insane. That's suicide. There's no way that I'm going to give you my ship to just go and, like, that's reckless. That's like, you are freaking out of your mind. And, but we have consistently Morpheus that's like, no, I believe. I believe Neo can do this. And so we just have that consistently throughout this movie where when Morpheus is to meet up with people, he's like, no, I believe that we can win this. I can believe that that Neo could go on and so on and so forth. And so we really just have it where Niobe is like, hey, take my ship. Then you won't have to sacrifice Hammer ship. And Niobe will just have to fly Hammer ship to get through this support line so they can get to Zion so they can then hit that EMP and wipe out all of these, of course, Sentinels. But there is to be another bargain to be had. They're kind of biding time for Neo to get his ship where it of course needs to be. So we of course have when Neo is kind of talking to everybody, telling them that like, hey, I'm going to need to take this ship and I'm going to need to go to Machine City. We of course have Trinity going and talking to Neo. It's like, yeah, like I immediately got it that when you were looking at everybody and you were looking at me, like what exactly you were like saying, like kind of with your body language, that I am gonna definitely go with you, and that like you are probably going to have to sacrifice yourself to help us win. And so, because we end up having them talk about love in this movie, because we really have it to where uh, we, of course, have Rama Kandra, who is to say, it's like, well, yeah, like, he is a program, but he feels love for his daughter Sati, and maybe that just, like, is to be enough. That he loves his daughter, he thinks that she's beautiful, and so Ramakandra and his wife are going to sacrifice themselves for Sati to just stay here in the Matrix. So now we just kind of have it where, like, still, like, Trinity is saying to Neo that at one point uh, there was an asking of what would they do for one another, and it's kind of that anything kind of thing, because we have Neo who kind of had that response when he was talking to Ramakandra that he would do anything for love, and like he would do anything for Trinity, and it continues to have the word love just kind of consistently used in here. And so we go on and we have Neo and Trinity, and like Trinity, like, she is technically nervous about what she's going to do here. Like, it took her like 10 minutes to just kind of lace up her boots, because she's just like like, what are we even doing here? Are we really just going to have to die here? Is this what we're really going to do? Is just die? Is all of us just going to die? Are we going to fail this mission? And so on and so forth. So we go on and we have uh, the Hammer going through that support line. And it's kind of interesting because while Zion is basically getting attacked here, they are the Hammer ship is to lose their radio, and so Hammer Locke doesn't even know that this is actually the Hammer ship, and they think it's some kind of decoy. But eventually they figure it out that it is actually the Hammer ship, and they're like, "Oh, thank God! Like, we have one ship here." But it seems like they're getting beaten up, or beaten the f up, while they're making their way through this support line. So, but while that's going on, while Niobe and Morpheus and Roland are kind of like shooting their way through this support line, we have, of course, them getting ready for war. We have, of course, I'm trying to think here. We have a girl named Chara with Z, and they're going and doing a number of rocket launcher like things to eventually go and have this go against these drillers, these big things that are trying to like break through Zion and crush a lot of their things and places that people are kind of hiding away to try to get to safety. And so we have, of course, guys uh, like Mifune, who are going in these armored personnel units, and we're going and having them all fire away at all these tons and tons of sentinels, to where really you just don't see like much of the actual like sentinels anymore. You just see this big, massive, like snake of a thing that's to all just be sentinels at this point, because like that's all you can just see. Like, the computer like special effects on this is just like just one big snake of a thing, and we don't actually see like the actual detail. We don't actually see this snake really up close. because Warner Brothers doesn't have that kind of money to show like a Sentinel thing up close. They have certain kind of shots where when they have to like really do close-ups where we have certain guys being attacked. That's when you kind of see the Sentinels more uh, like kind of in detail. But most of the time, it's just these far away shots of these just kind of Sentinel snake looking things, which just looks like it is what it is with Warner Brothers special effects, which they just don't have a ton of money for that. But like I guess for this movie, it looks good enough. So we go on and have guys like Mifune eventually going on and losing because they run out of bullets eventually and they call out for a reload. And so now we have guys like Kid and a number of other guys just kind of running out there with the armor. And I'm like, oh my god, these guys are just having these little like carts. And you have these guys with these kind of like the, god, whatever, the laser gun things are, the electrical guns are, that I'm not gonna even bother having this specific name for them. I'll give up like that, where I'm not gonna. If people know the specific name of that gun, put it in the comments below. Put it a billion times because I would really love the comment, and I probably won't respond back to it. But like that's the one thing that I'm like, I'm not gonna go through and name off that, because I'm naming off so many other things. So I would just rather not take the time. So we go on and we start to see that all the armored personnel unit guys are starting to slowly but surely get killed. Because we have like three guys all kind of huddled together and they're kind of firing away. And we consistently have Mifune, who's kind of telling everybody, like he's giving them this big massive speech before they all go out there to just kind of tell them it's like, well, hey, if like if we're gonna go out there and if we're gonna fight for our lives, then we're gonna like make it worth it, kind of thing, and definitely go out like battling for our lives, so to speak. And so everybody's like, yeah, whoa, woo, yeah, giving this riveting speech that I couldn't bother to even say what it actually was because there's too much to talk about here. So we eventually have Chara and Z who start to take out some of these drillers, or diggers, who crash their way through Zion to help all the Sentinels make their way into Zion. And then Chara is to go on and start like rocketing some of these diggers. And so all of a sudden, when the Sentinels are to realize that these characters are going and doing these rocket launcher like things, we have both Z and Chara run back to this one part to kind of seal up, so that way the Sentinels will stop attacking them and they can just move on to another part to get closer to these drillers. And eventually we have Chara who ends up dying, and Z ends up kind of being able to make her way back to this sealed lid thing and like staying alive here. Because I'm like, yeah, like of course Z is gonna live here because the other girl, sadly enough, Chara here, she was obviously gonna die. There wasn't gonna be a surprise thing where it's like, oh no, she's gonna live here. No, if anybody's gonna die, it's gonna be this one girl. And it feels like there is no way for these characters to have easily, like, it seemed like they were both going to die. But weirdly enough, we just have Z who just conveniently makes it out of here because she was like the first one to make it into that spot. So of course she was going to live and Chara was going to die simply from waiting to have to like get into that one section. So now that I've covered quasi most of that, let's kind of pedal back here. So we So we have both Trinity and Neo who are kind of on their ship, logos, making their way to Motor City, or Machine City, Motor City, Machine City. And so all of a sudden it seems like there is a malfunction in their power. And so Trinity's like, well, hey, I'll go and I'll get it. So we of course have Trinity who's kind of adjusting this thing and going back, and all of a sudden Bane is to grab her and put a scalpel to her throat. Is like, well, yeah, of course. Like he sends the woman out to go uh, and fix things and so on and so forth. So what ends up happening is that we have Bane going and cuffing Trinity, and then kind of Neo's kind of waiting for like, okay, where's Trinity at this point? So we of course have Neo kind of checking out what's going on, and all of a sudden Trinity is telling Neo that Bane is to have a knife to her, and so Neo is coming back to see them with a, of course, electrical gun. So we have, of course, consistently trying to tell Neo that he's Mr. Smith, he's Agent Smith. And we just still have Neo's like, who are you? What are you? When are you? And so we just have Bane who's just like, well, like I guess with this kind of flesh and this eye and this and these smells, because we have like Agent Smith, like especially when we had the very first Matrix movie where he's going and talking to Morpheus and he's like I don't know what it is. It must be the smell, the stink, and the I'm just intoxicated by it, or whatever he ends up saying, where he kind of pushes the thing into Morpheus's nose, and he's like he either is to say that he's disgusted by it, or he like says something about something along those lines. So I don't know what it is with Agent Smith and just the smell of things. I don't know, like, I guess, like, you always have to break it down to some kind of sense of something. And plus, also, I guess, with Agent Smith, like, I guess the smell of things is to always be the top thing to kind of be a dead giveaway that it's an Agent Smith. Weirdly. I don't know why that is, but it is what it is. So, we go on and we have Neo who drops his gun here, and so what ends up happening is Trinity ends up falling into this opened kind of hole here, and then closes the lid to where Trinity can go and cut her ties, and so that way both Smith and technically Smith and Neo can go on and fight it out here in the real world. I'm not quite sure if Trinity was the one who like sealed that up, or maybe it was Bane himself, but like eventually we were to get really the more important thing, which is to just really be this fight out here. So we have, of course, both Neo and Smith fighting it out, because Smith is to go in and grab this gun, but Neo is to kind of get it out of his hands when both of them are going and firing off this gun, but they're firing it across the ceiling. But eventually Neo gets his gun away from this guy, and so they go on and they start like wrestling and like fighting off. And so Bane is to go and take this power cable and to put it into Neo's eyes, which is to, of course, blind him, or is to kind of just weld his eyes basically shut horrifically, to where like this guy's like bleeding to death from his eye loss, so to speak. So we now have Bane thinking that he has the jump on Neo. That he's like, like I'm just gonna wait for Neo to try to figure out where I am, and then I'm gonna go and just beat him with this one uh, kind of tire iron. Tire iron? Yeah, I think that's what it is. So we of course have Neo that is to now be blind here, and so we have Bane going on and talking, and so Neo's getting closer and closer to him, and like I think we have Bane who's talking about how Neo can possibly feel helpless, that like it's only a matter of time before Bane is to take the attack to Neo and kind of take him down, so on and so forth. And so we have it where Bane is to think that, oh, like, man, like, I have this guy pegged. He's freaking done for. And so Neo goes on and is to, of course, be following Bane playing possum this whole time, because Neo is to tell Bane, like, I can read your code. Like, your code is to help me figure out exactly where you are. So Neo is now fighting Bane, and eventually Neo is to get this tire iron away from Bane, and he goes and clubs Bane, crushes his head, and now Bane is now dead here. So Trinity gets out of her spot that she's in and goes and tries to find Neo, who now Trinity is to realize that Neo is now blind, and so Neo's like, "Hey, like I'm thinking you're gonna have to drive because Neo cannot see now." So we push on here, and so we of course have the Hammer Group making their way to, of course, Zion, and so they're like consistently going on trying to make their they're starting to lose big chunks of their ship. Sentinel pieces or Sentinels are kind of tearing this ship apart, and so we get to the point where Mifune is to really be the last APU guy left. That he's basically the last stand for these armored personal units, because everyone else was wiped out. Like there was quite a like 20 some odd guys or 20 some odd people all in these APUs, and it just comes down to like one guy. And so all of a sudden we have Mifune who's asking for a reload, and so now the kid is running out there with this one gunman, and of course the gunman easily gets wiped out. And so we of course have this one last stand of a guy, Mifune, who is to have his armor eventually get or his bullets for his gun end up getting jammed here. And so Mifune is basically just telling Kid, it's like, well, hey man, like just make a run for it, because like I'm just gonna die here. Like I'm just gonna try to make my last stand. But the Kid ends up luckily going on at the very last minute, kicking this bullet thing in there because it's jammed, And so luckily, like, we have the last stand guy who's having bullet jamming troubles. But so we have this big massive wave of sentinels coming towards Mithun here. And so he goes on and starts blasting them, but he's still way overwhelmingly outnumbered, that this APU falls over and the kid is to fall over in safety. And so Locke at this point is trying to tell Mifune that they're needing him to open this gate because the hammer ship is going to make their way through this gate. So they're like, hey, like, we've lost all of our defenses, so we might as well just let the hammer come in here and have them do their electric magnetic pulse, their EMP. So the kid is now talking to Mifune as he's going to die here. And what if Mifune would have told the kid nothing and he would have just died? Like, coincidentally, we just have Mifune have the perfect amount of time to tell this kid what to do and then to peace out. Because Mifune is to tell this kid, hey, like, get into my APU and take out the chain to open up this gate. And so the kid is like, well, like, I only did like the training, like I barely even did the like training course for this thing, and like I didn't even pass that. And Mifune is saying, it's like, well, hey, neither did I, so like, go on and just try your best, because all you have to do is just one small of a task. So Z, of course, is going on and trying to make her way to where the kid is, to kind of use her her gun that she is to have to try and help out the kid being able to shoot this gate open. And so, because Z is feeling like Link is going to come soon with this ship, so of course the kid is to shoot the chain to open up this gate. And so the hammer is just freaking, like, they're just squeaking by through this whole support line. And we had Locke saying, it's like, oh, that's not hammer because they're going through some mechanical way to get through here, and that just seems like it's a lie. But it's actually the hammer ship because they ended up doing some sensors or whatever, they could figure it out. So we of course have the hammer ship using its EMP, going and taking out every single one of these sentinels in this area. And so they're like, yeah, we did it. And we had Roland the whole entire time, who's wanting to blow the EMP early, consistently. And Morpheus is going and telling Link eventually when he is to go and run off to get the EMP started and to burn it, Link. Burn it. So Link hits the EMP. It's like, yeah, we did it. But like, when all the captains go and talk to the councilman, and Locke is basically saying, like, yeah, like, that was our last bit of defense. Like, what they did here with doing this EMP, like, basically just let it to where now the Sentinels are like, hey, like, it's open season, go and kill all these people off, because this was the last, like, their last big move that actually kind of did backfire on them, in all honesty. So, because I guess they had, like, it's kind of funny how Locke in one of the other movies was like, "Man, we gotta have all these ships here, and all these ships have to be in Zion, and like it'll all depend on all these ships being here." But man, when you really break it down, like it seemed like they had a ton of ships in the one movie, but now in this movie they're like going on like two whole ships, and like that's all they had for this film. I'm like, man, what a drastic difference that one movie makes. Where they like, I guess they destroy a load of ships, and like I guess they couldn't get them back working again. Like they could have found some people. Like they end up like seemingly finding some new people in this movie to just add certain characters and certain ships somewhere. Like I don't remember the medic being in the other movie, or I don't remember like AK, the one guy from the Condemned movie, being in this film from before. But anyways, like I don't remember Sparky being on that one other ship, uh, that operator. So, uh, so we go on and we have Locke now saying it's like, well, I think our last defense is we're gonna have to go into the temple, and the councilmen are kind of like, well, like what's really our chances that we're gonna survive this? And Locke ends up like turning that answer to Morpheus, because it's like, well, like this guy believes in miracles, so ask him if we're gonna win this, because like me, I'm freaking done. Like I like I think we're gonna lose here. Like we're gonna like there's no way for us to win. And Morpheus is like, well, I believe, like I think we're gonna like because they have such a huge, massive belief in Neo, because Naomi is to say that she's to give up her ship because she had talked to the Oracle, and the Oracle had told Niobe to trust in Neo. Because if she can't trust in anybody, like trust in Neo. And so Naomi easily gave up her ship. So now let's go and let's talk about that. So Trinity and Neo are to make their way to, of course, Machine City. And the further and further they go on in there, the more now that they are to, of course, be attacked by the Sentinels. And Neo is trying to use his power to stop them. But Trinity is telling, or Neo is telling Trinity that he just can't hold them off anymore. And so Trinity's like, well, like, what should we do now? And so Neo is going on and telling her to just go up, just keep flying up. So they keep going through this like turbulent sky of horrific clouds and gray and darkened clouds. And so they end up flying above to this open sky where all of a sudden Trinity's like, beautiful. And then all of a sudden we realize here that technically this ship doesn't exactly have like power right now, and so all of a sudden they're kind of flying downward, like with their own power. And so now Neo is telling Trinity here to try and kind of hit this certain like lever thing, and to push a button to get power back in the ship. And it seems like she's failing at it because she's doing it too quickly. And Neo's like, hey, do it again, but slower, and then it should work. And so Trinity then gets the power on, but it's a little bit too late because they really just crashed this ship anyways. And they crash it into some building in Machine City. So Neo is to wake up and is now calling out for Trinity. And Trinity's seat is not next to where Neo is. And so now Neo goes and starts fishing for where the heck Trinity is, because of course he still can't see. So we go on and we have now Neo finding Trinity, and she thinks that, or he thinks that she's okay, and because she's talking to him, and so we end up having the reveal that Trinity is actually wounded here. There had been a number of cables that had gone through her, and she, of course, is going to die. And so now, Trinity, of course, is dying off, and all that she can really think about here is the one time that Neo saved her and was to bring her back to life. But he can't do that now here because like this is not the Matrix, it's the real world, and there's no way for Trinity to be saved by Neo this time around. And so Trinity, when Neo was to catch her, Trinity was to say that she was sorry, but what she actually just wanted to say is that she loved him, and so Trinity is to go on and die here. And it's like, oh, that sucks. Like, honestly, there are some sad points in this film. Like, I'm not gonna lie and just say like, hey man, I've invested in these characters because I've technically seen like 3 of these films fairly recently, but I know how these stories are to technically end because I've seen Resurrections, and there has to be a reason why it has these characters technically in a newer film. So it kind of ruins this movie, in all honesty, if you've seen the Resurrection trailer or whichever, and you want to now understand what the heck, whatever that means. So we go on and we now have Neo that is trying to make it out of his ship and is to go on and start climbing on this building to eventually meet a like I guess the because they were going through and they were flying through those fields. If anybody remembers those fields where Neo was, of course, to be freed, they're going and flying through those fields where there was a bunch of people going on and being little tube people, and eventually being forced to be in the Matrix instead of being freed. So so I was like, man, that's kind of an interesting kind of like way of going like full circle where like Trinity and Neo at one point were in those fields, and like Morpheus was going on and saying that there are endless fields where eventually everyone is to be just boiling it all down to everyone eventually being a battery, and Neo just loses it and, and just he's gonna pop. It's gross, I know. Everybody's probably thinking like, don't remind me of that barfing scene. That's gross, but it's true. So, but we have Neo making his way through this machine city to go on and find this big, massive machine lord of a thing that is to be called Deus Ex Machina. Why do they always have to call things like Ex Machina? Do they all know that there's to be some movie called Ex Machina and an anime called Ex Machina and all kinds of stuff now? Why can't they just call it some cool and interesting name that doesn't feel like it's ripping off some movie somewhere and so on and so forth, or some anime somewhere? I don't know, it is what it is. So we of course have it where Neo is come to bargain because it's Doctor Strange time, and so Doctor Strange is trying to face off Dormammu like, Dormammu, I come to bargain. Let me use my magical spell to just keep you in this time bubble until you are convinced that you're willing to hear me out about my bargain while you kill me 50 different times. So So Neo is going and talking to the Deus Ex Machina, and he is going on to tell him, it's like, well, hey, like, I get that Agent Smith is a problem for both of us, and so how about I make a bargain with you that if I go into the Matrix and defeat him here, that you'll let us be in peace. And we have the kind of Deus Ex Machina who's like, why do I need your help? Like, F it. Like, I'm going to go and I'm, like, really tempted to just kill you right now. Like, I don't need you. But so, Neo just kind of puts up a very convincing argument that's like, that he's going to go and take Smith down. And the Deus Ex Machina is like, well, hey, like, well, what if you fail? And he's like, I won't. And it's like, but the machines are just kind of like, they're just really just letting like Neo go on and do this. Like, nah, like, let's see what he can do. Why not? Like, we have nothing better to do. Plus, also, Neo can still use his, like, his force power to take some of us down, or try to. So, all of a sudden, the Sentinels are going in. There are snakes swirling in to Zion, and they're like, oh man, like, what's gonna go down here? Like we're all gonna die. We might as well just say our prayers now and just kiss our batukas goodbye, because we're gonna die here. And so all of a sudden, the Sentinels just stop, and everybody's like, what the fuck? And so Neo and Morpheus are trying to figure it out, or Niobe and Morpheus are trying to figure it out. Like, what the heck is going on? So Morpheus just goes out there and he starts like walking out. He drops his gun and he's like, hey guys, hey Sentinels. Like, hey guys, same team? Temporarily? And so Morpheus is to have like these kind of people like stunned in misbelief, and then Morpheus is turning to them and he's like, Neo is fighting for us. Like he's gonna beat Smith, and he's gonna create world peace here between us and the machines. And high five, everybody! Right? Everybody's gonna party after this, because Zion is where the party would be. Because freaking Tank would tell us from the Matrix film that I completely forgot about. Even I couldn't even pronounce freaking Zion and Resurrections, but now I guess the reason why we have this here is really for me to just have to consistently be now ingrained in Zion, because, yeah, it's a thing. So, we of course have Neo jacked in by the machines to go into the Matrix to face off with Agent Smith. So, we have, of course, one Agent Smith to fight Neo here, because all the other Agent Smiths are just enjoying the show, as, of course, we have Smith saying here. So, we now have this, like, horrifically pouring down rain in this fight. And I'm just like, man, like, I wonder if any of these guys got horrible pneumonia or, like, got sick or something like that. You would probably assume that they probably had some kind of, like, swim kind of gear underneath them to, like, prevent that from happening. Because, like, man, are they just getting, like, pelted with rain to where, like, I don't even know how they can talk because they're just getting pelted down with rain. It looks so ridiculous how they're having to, like, say some lines, and I would be thinking they'd be like, plah, 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 like water would be consistently coming out of them as they're trying to say a number of these things, these long stretch of lines, while they're being poured on with rain, which just sounds insane. Insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain. Anyways, so we have Smith going on and fighting Neo, and we have the one cool thing where Smith is to, like, be, like, smashing into the street, and the street kind of, like, like pushes back to where we have all these like these road shards or these road like cracked pieces, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. As I've consistently touched my nose through a number of these this part of this movie, I'm trying to figure out by scratching my nose. So, but we have Smith with these oracle powers, knowing how everything is going to be broken down here, and so we have both Smith and Neo just kind of fighting it out, and they're both flying now. They can both fly, and because Neo is going on and like kicking Smith pretty well out this window, and so Smith is going flying out of this window, but all of a sudden he's just kind of like he's being able to now fly in air, and Neo's like, ah, crap, like there's no way to just easily like kick this guy enough, and so like Neo has to come up with something else here, and this kind of breaks down like Highlander the Source, where excuse me, we have kind of Duncan throughout that movie is just really tired of having to fight. Like he doesn't care about being uh, the one anymore. Like he just wants to stop the fighting, and like he just wants this all to be over. So when Duncan is with the very last Highlander guy, he's like, I don't want to fight anymore, and boom, that's the answer. Like that's the thing. And so but we go on and we just consistently have them fighting it out Superman style, like almost Man of Steel like ways, and I'm like, you could see possibly how this movie might have gone on to help them figure out how to do these kind of flying Superman, Man of Steel kind of things for this film, because they had to figure out how to do this. But I don't know what the timeline was when Man of Steel came out. I'm assuming Man of Steel came out after this, because that would make a lot of sense. Because, anyways, pushing on. So, but we have it where Neo keeps getting up, and like Smith at one point had like thrusted Neo through the ground, leaving this big, huge, massive hole. And so both Smith and Neo are kind of now on the ground, and all the Smiths are kind of gathering around this hole. And so Smith is asking Neo, it's like, what is the purpose of you doing this? Like, what is the purpose with you fighting me? Like, is it love? Is it, is it to, like, continue to, like, exist? Like, what is it? Like, what is your purpose? Like, we have, of course, Smith just, like, breaking this all down, and it always comes down to purpose of him. When we have Reloaded, where Smith is going on, it's the purpose that binds us and drives us and this and that. So we now have Smith who's asking Neo what his purpose is, of why he's doing what he's doing. And we never have one time where Smith is to bring up Trinity, like, oh, hey, like, where's Trinity? Is she dead? To just drive Neo even more so to be like, I'm gonna freaking murder this guy. No, like, it doesn't, like, I like those kind of movies where all of a sudden you have this one moment where all of a sudden you have the villain who mentions, like, a reason for the hero to now just fight even harder, because, like, we really just have it where the villain is like, like, your girlfriend died, and it's like, like, pah! Like, I like those kinds of movies. So, we have really just Smith just wanting to figure out why Neo is doing what he's doing, and Neo is saying, because I choose to, and so he ends up getting back up. And so we have, of course, Neo just kind of punching Smith through this road, but then he ends up coming right back, and so we just have Smith now. It's like, well, this is my world. This is my world now, and so we have Smith who ends up going and attacking Neo back, and so now, since Smith has these oracle-like powers, he's like, you know what? I think I've said everything that I've wanted to say now, and I think at this point I'm needing to have to say a little bit more of something and stand right here and to then realize how I've won. And so Smith goes on and simulates Neo, and Neo just lets it happen at this point. And, like, so there's no struggle, there's no nothing. And Smith before was to, of course, ask the Oracle, like, why are you not fighting this? And now, if I were Smith, I'd be like, well, why aren't you fighting this? Why aren't you easily letting this happen? And so all of a sudden, we end up having, of course, the machines, the Deus Ex Machina, who is putting something in to Neo, which I guess is this programming, to make it so that Neo can explode every single one of these Smiths to make all the other programs come back to life, like the Oracle, or like Sati, or of course good God, really? The one guy who is to be Sarath. Good God. It took me forever. So they all come back, and so now Neo had to sacrifice himself for Smith to die here, and to basically die the exact same way that he died in the first Matrix movie. But really, we just still have it where even in Resurrections, like, Smith never really goes away. So it kind of becomes a point. There's so much about this where I'm like, man, there's a lot of, like, pointless stuff in here. Plus, I also don't quite understand when we have certain people come back later on from this film. But it's whatever at this point. So now we have Neo's body, who is to be unplugged and is to, of course, be carried off by some machines to eventually go on to the fate of what happens in Resurrections. So we go on and we have, of course, the kid is going on and shouting out to everybody that the war is over, that they have won, and that, like, there's peace going on and the Sentinels have all gone. And so the kid is to be the only one who has figured this out. We have the one councilman is like, what? Like, what had happened? Like, what's going on here, kid? Like, hey, like, I didn't see what was going on because I couldn't have been bothered, because heaven forbid I look out a window or anything, right? So the kid is telling him, like, hey, the war is over. Like, hey, we won, we beat him. Blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden they're like, yeah! Like, Lincoln's like, yeah, we did it. And everybody's, like, celebrating, and they're freaking getting naked and all kinds of stuff, like rubbing against one another like they were doing before when the party was getting going and whatever from the other part. They're like, hey, they're partying it down and getting busy because they're weird like that. So we have both Naomi and Morpheus are just kind of hugging it out. It was kind of funny the one part when both Naomi and Morpheus were on the ship making their way back, and they hit the EMP, and we go back to that same line of uh, things don't really change, but some things do, or some things change, but and then some things don't change, or some goofy line exchange of that. So we now have the architect and we have the oracle kind of going on to talk to one another, and like it was kind of interesting when the oracle was talking to Neo about the source and how the source, the architect, was to be a guy that was to always have the equal balance of things. There was to always be a counter to everything, a yin and yang, to where, of course, Agent Smith is the negative to Neo's positive, and there always has to be this thing that exists. And so, and that's, I think, why we end up getting into the next film, because I feel for every villain, there has to be a hero that exists. So, we rarely just have it to where these characters are just having to forcibly battle it out forever and nothing is to really change, because the Matrix is never going to evolve to anything. So there's never going to be a win-loss kind of a thing. It's just still the same old battle. But this time around, I guess really just the machines aren't really involved in that battle or involved as much as they were before. It's just now the fight between really just the freed people and the agents, the analysts, or the whatever. But still, let's pedal back here. So we go on and we have the Oracle talking to the architect, and we, of course, have the architect going and talking to the Oracle, and Sarath comes in, and Sati comes in, and I guess Sati was to program this sunrise and how it was really beautiful. So we, of course, go on here and have the architect just kind of saying that he doesn't think that the peace is really going to last between the machines and the freed people, and that some people are going to realize now that they can possibly be freed. And the oracle is like, well, yeah, and we can give them that choice if they want to be free now. And instead of them having to just kind of just still live in this kind of existence and so on and so forth. So the oracle eventually goes off, and so basically we just have it to where everything is just kind of finish up, and we just kind of finish up the oracle here and Sarath, and like that everyone had partied and so on and so forth, because basically like that's it, like that's the finishing up of this movie. So with that said, I think that covers everything. If I didn't get to every single little bit of dialogue, is a different animal altogether, and so really when it comes down to dialogue, there's actually a lot of good exchanges and a lot of good dialogue between both Smith and Neo during that whole fight scene, where we just have a really good back and forth going on in there. And I couldn't have been bothered to take the time to say all that and to memorize all that, because I usually get the big events and all of this stuff. So, but also really, if I could gone on and watch this again at some point, like I would probably come at this very differently and I would remember different things. and so on and so forth. But with that said, I think I am going to get the heck out of here because I think that this is good enough to put out there. With that said, I know somebody somewhere will probably like, oh, well, like you didn't do this right. Blah, 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 blah. I don't think I ever. This is another one of these where it's kind of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is another one of those where I'm just like, hey man, this is good enough. This is like Endgame. These are these big, massive things of movie where I don't think I'm ever gonna go and review these again. Hopefully everything goes well for this channel because man, do I just not want to have to go through and review all these bigger, massive movies again. Because man, do I just like this was like the perfect time to want to go through and do these kinds of things. So that way I can take the time and like process them and whatever and like figure out the best way to do them. So I'm going to get out of here so I can go out of my way to edit this down and get it out to people. So without a doubt, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. All right. So since I have to fuse clips anyways, I figured it's like I'd said it's like, oh well, like what about resurrections? You said that you were going to mention some things about resurrections. I'm like, okay, might as well. So there were some mistakes that I did possibly make through resurrections, and so for anybody that doesn't want spoilers about resurrections, possibly go into that review and kind of still hear what I had to say about that movie. Uh, like I would have to go through the movie again to still feel like if I still had that like ugh kind of feeling, which I don't really want to. It's kind of a very hugely fan service movie that really used to be such a fanboy of its own uh like previous things that it just blah. So but there's a couple of things that I missed in this spoiler variation of it. It's probably little small details of things, but like so really like I just kind of want to kind of clear my conscience of it all, or just kind of confess that like I know I probably didn't get every little bit of something in there, and like I know the pronunciation of Scion, and I didn't even know what it was, and plus I didn't even know what the name of the ship was for that movie, and I still don't. I couldn't even be bothered to go and find it somewhere. But like I think I said it was like the Nebuchadnezzar, but like I didn't know what it was. I was like, it's the ship, whatever this ship is. I don't know what it's called. But and so people could probably correct me that because they probably have Google and whatever, and like I couldn't have been bothered still to this day to find out what their ship name is. But I mispronounced Cyan. I'll say that. And but like the rest of this will kind of be spoilers. So if people don't want to know, they can stop this clip right now and go into eventually seeing the resurrections, and then possibly come back and whatever. But if you've seen the resurrections, now is the time for you to hear all of this stuff that I kind of forgot about. Because it's very small details, but I think most of my comment section kind of filled in a little bit of gaps of whatever. But yeah, so when we have Neil Patrick Harris's character as the analyst in that movie, there were certain things that I did forget about, which was simply the point where Neo was going on and having the decision between the red and the blue pill, and of course he takes the red pill. And we consistently have the analyst, Neil Patrick Harris, trying to convince Neo to stay in this world. And so we have like Neo who gets just pushed into him going into a therapy session, convincing him that what he had seen was all just an illusion playing around in his mind like he's crazy, or that he is to possibly have a psychotic break, which is to lead him to now be therapeutically just pulled away from all that. So, but we eventually have Neo realize that what's going on is the program is trying to prevent Neo from being freed. And so when Neo is to actually take the pill and eventually go inside this one mirror to get unplugged, we still have the analyst Neil Patrick Harris who's still like going on the other side of this mirror and convincing Neo like, hey, don't go, don't leave, like no, like you're having a psychotic break, like don't believe what these people are telling you, and so on and so just pleading and convincing Neo to not go on and not go back. But I didn't watch this movie any further to go on and like and kind of wrap around anything, or like just basically whatever I have here is kind of whatever I kind of left off of the like the thought process of the film. Like I don't have a different perspective about this film altogether, or I don't have like a different approach to it. Like I know I also had probably forgotten about the one time where the game developer is going and like, yeah, the coolest part about these games were when Neo was to go on and kind of kind of like rotate back, because all about Resurrections is just that fanboy like thing of things where they're like, well, yeah, like I don't know how many movies covered that silly event. Like we have Deuce Bigelow, Mel Gigolo covering that kind of that flyback movement. There was like Scary Movie that covered that flyback movement, and so there was like that one move like made it into pop culture to where they tried to re-reference it here, but they didn't go back and do it here. They like if they were going to do a fanboy fan service thing, I guess that should have been one of the moves, but they didn't do that because of course we just had Neo and Trinity and all the original the OG Matrix people. Like they didn't have to put it much in the work into this movie. It seemed like most of the heavy lifting again was from the young cast, because it was just like that. Like we're gonna have these people just come in, and Neo's gonna Hadouken people, and Trinity's just gonna not be Trinity for most of that film until the very end of it, because they had to have a big battle scene. Um, but yeah, other than that, I think for the most point of Resurrections, I think that's fine. So spoilers, everybody, because really, I think I'm gonna get out of here now because I feel relieved that I kind of got that off my chest and I finished up this movie and this and that. But yeah, so I think I'm gonna get out of here because I think that's all that I really thought about and was thinking about for Resurrections, because everything else, it's just like watch the movie and you'll understand it, or you'll probably not understand it or understand why it even needed to be made, because just Warner Brothers is heavily miss, and eventually they get something right. Uh, Probably it. The remake was probably one of those where it's like, ooh, that was a good movie, or the Meg was a good movie to a lot of people. But surprising a lot of times, like I think too much now, we have really just every Warner Brother movie, especially if they're going back to a franchise, they have to sell every freaking movie to you in the latest one. And because they're seeing how like, oh well, like the Ghostbuster like Afterlife is doing that. So we're just now going and having a newer product, and like Space Jam the New Legacy kind of did this also, where Space Jam the New Legacy was selling every single effing thing in their Warner Brothers catalog. And so now that Warner Brothers had that Space Jam New Legacy movie, that's what they're basically doing for every single one of their things, which I'm like, well, why don't they just do a Ready Player 2 movie so that way they can go on and sell even more of their catalog? and so we can actually get a really cool, interesting looking movie that is to be a sequel from Ready Player One, because I feel like Ready Player One was done by Warner Brothers, and the only person that didn't want to play in that movie was just the Disney people. So, with that said, I'm gonna finally just get out of here, call it a day. Cause, anyways, bye, buddy. Bye, buddy. Uh, don't don't bother having to check out any of my reviews of Matrix. Just enjoy this for what it is. Or if you enjoy this movie, then good for you. If you went into this part, spoilers, you've seen both of these movies now, and you feel indifferent or whatever about them. So I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.